All right, let's get started. I think everybody, a lot of the people are showing up right now, and we'll just get right into it. So today is all about SketchUp. This is a sort of a, we call it the Workshop Wednesdays. Once a month, basically we come to you to discuss a given topic to help out emerging professionals sort of excel in their career. And the last two have really been about the ARE, but we wanted to mix it up a little bit here and start doing other things. So the one thing that I saw that there was sort of a need for was to do kind of an intro to SketchUp. SketchUp is a really versatile program, and it just seemed like the best sort of software to start with. I think there are other things we'll keep going with, maybe Photoshop and CAD and other things in the future. But I thought SketchUp was definitely one to. It's easy to understand after we get into it, and it's also something that can help people a lot if they're not familiar with it. So just real quick, apologize if there's a little pause here and there. I'm switching between a couple monitors and things right now, but all right, there we go. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I am Mike LaValle, and I am an architect in Buffalo, New York. And I've basically been doing these the last couple times, the last couple months, just to sort of help people out at more of like a webinar tutorial level. And I hope that you'll get something out of it tonight. The chat is open right now, and I think a couple people have already started asking me questions. So the way that this works is it's going to be very, if anybody's been to the other two workshops, those were a little bit more structured. This is a little bit more sort of organic. I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different things, but the more, this is really for you guys. So if you have specific questions that you want me to kind of go over, very either things you're interested in or things you want to know more about, we'll try to have a Q&A sort of toward the end, but please feel free to comment throughout. And here we go. Let's get started. So like I said, the Workshop Wednesdays are really a series of brief and informative sessions to help evolve your architectural career. They're meant to be very sort of quick exercises that we can learn from, that'll help you, advance yourself in your career. It's brought to you by the AIA Buffalo, Western New York Emerging Professionals Committee and Evolving Architect, which is actually my personal blog where I have spent the last year or so basically writing once a week about things that affect emerging professionals in the architectural field. And I have a significant set of ties to the AIA Buffalo, Western New York chapter. I'm currently the secretary for the chapter, and I've originally sort of tried to re-energize the Emerging Professionals Committee, and I really believe that the emerging professionals, they're a very important part of the whole picture, because the better that we can learn from each other at that stage in our careers and become sort of full-fledged professionals and sort of evolve into our careers, the better off we'll be and the better off the profession will be. And so I really believe in that, and that's why I like doing these workshops. Like I said, my name is Mike LaValle. I'm a licensed architect and a lead AP. The reason that I chose SketchUp as one of the first sort of software workshops to get into was because I've been using SketchUp probably for the better part of a decade. I use it a little less frequently now, but I still use it on a fairly regular basis. And for several years, it was definitely a daily go-to sort of tool to use for, everything from simple design to more advanced, complex modeling and rendering. So I think what I'd say is, you're in the right place if you've never looked at SketchUp before in your life, but would like to know now, or would like to now. You want to learn a 3D modeling program for the first time. SketchUp is a really good one to sort of get a handle on, and it can be a platform to other things like Rhino or Revit or other things. But SketchUp is definitely a very good starting place. Or you're just awesome and you want to know everything you can about SketchUp so you can improve your skills in general. I think it's really invaluable to try to improve yourself in any way you can, and it'll not only make you more marketable as you move from position to position, but it will also give you sort of the background knowledge to either go out on your own and do other things, or use those skills in ways that you hadn't even considered before. So the one thing I'd say is the expert in I love this quote, the expert in anything was once a beginner. And it's true. If you've just been sort of able to toy with SketchUp a little bit, or maybe you haven't even opened it before, the one thing I'd say is that, don't worry, especially with SketchUp. Everybody starts from the same place. It's just how much do you sort of keep at it or try new things to basically make yourself better and learn advanced techniques to become more expert in something. Maybe you'll find that after today you don't even like SketchUp, and that's fine. But at least you found out that you didn't like that kind of thing, and you can make decisions to better your career in other ways. But I hope that this will at least give you sort of a general overview of the kinds of things that you can find in SketchUp, and possibly give you a base to start searching for other kinds of programs that you might be interested in as well. So like I said, this is Intro to SketchUp, and really what we'll be doing today is, just to summarize, I'm going to basically open the program from scratch and just go over the main interface. We'll talk about the basic tools, some best practices, and I'm basically just going to run through each of the major tools and give you a good sense of the kinds of things that you can do in SketchUp. But we're not necessarily going to end up with anything specific at the end. We'll just sort of use it as kind of a play box to sort of experiment with a couple things. So that's why I say, if there's things you want to know, like I said, there are a couple questions that have already come up that I'll try to look at specifically. But if there are, this is definitely more of a workshop than the last two webinars were. It's really about the sort of interaction and the questions you guys have too. And at the very end, I'll go into just a straight sort of question and answer section, and that'll be about it. I'm trying to go no longer than about an hour, because I think that that's about the right amount of time to talk about this. So I think from there, basically switch over to SketchUp now. Just a second. Alrighty. So basically what we have here is Sketchup Make, which is Just a little bit of a background on SketchUp. Some of you may or may not know that it was purchased by Google a couple of years ago, well, several years ago now, I guess, and then eventually Google sold it to a company called Trimble. I believe Trimble does things more related to, I don't know for sure, but I think it does things more related to mapping and things like that, and has a wider array of services, and just decided to buy SketchUp as a service. So everything's pretty much the same as when Google owned it, but the thing to know about what we're doing here is I'm going to show you nothing that you couldn't do with the sort of free version of SketchUp. I think the more advanced things you're going to need to probably end up purchasing SketchUp if you want to do a lot of the more sort of advanced things. But just to do sort of everyday 3D modeling, you shouldn't have a problem doing almost everything with SketchUp Make. SketchUp Make is the free version, and SketchUp Pro is the paid version. And I think SketchUp Pro can range anywhere from something like $500 up, which is still fairly cheap based on the kinds of costs that you can incur from other 3D modeling packages, but it's still pricey. I mean, it's not something that you should necessarily do lightly. So here's the intro sort of window. When you first load up SketchUp, this is what you'll see, especially if you have SketchUp Make. And basically what it says is it gives you, see if I can, yep. So if you can sort of follow the arrow as I go here, license to, and then, typically this would be your name, default template. The reason why this is important is in most cases as architects, we'll use the architectural design template, and this is what I've defaulted to in my own SketchUp. So if you want to change that, the first thing, and this is important because it'll set up your entire sort of world for SketchUp once you get into the file. So the first thing, and that's why this is the first step, the first thing you should do is, if you don't want that, is just go over here to choose template, and you can choose between any of these other templates if you want. Simple, these are all in either feet and inches or millimeters, meters. So do you want it to be in metric? Do you not want it to be in metric? You just have to sort of make a decision early on, if you can, based on whatever your model is actually going to be. So if you're doing, these are actually a lot more templates than there used to be even. It used to be far simpler, but now that there are a lot of other uses for SketchUp, especially the free version, doing things like woodworking and things like that, you can, and furniture design as it's described there, depending on what scale you're working at, that's sort of the important part. But for the most part, for our purposes, the architectural design, feet and inches, is almost always the one I use. I don't think that, even if I have a larger project, I won't use anything else, because this is generally set up the way you want it to be. So I start using SketchUp. Switching here as it loads. Okay, so all right, so we're back into SketchUp. Apologies for that, just the camera kicked out for a second. So basically what we have here is this is exactly what you'll see when the window pops open. You can tell that this is sort of the way that a lot of the other 3D packages, if you're familiar with any other 3D package, you can tell that it's sort of set up very similarly to that. There are a left-hand set of sort of primary tools. Now this is a little bit more customized in some ways than the standard sort of out-of-the-box way, because this is the way that I actually set mine up. But what we'll do is I'll show you how to sort of rearrange the toolbars and play around with what kind of tools go where, and I'll also go over sort of my favorite kinds of staple tools to keep on your keeping your user interface. So that's for anybody who's not familiar with general software terminology. This is the user interface, or the UI, and basically there's sort of like a home bar here with the file, edit, view, camera, draw, tools, window, help, and all that is fairly standard across most software. But there's a sort of a horizontal bar of tools here that is more or less the tools that I find that you won't be actively using all the time, but you'll need to relate to every now and again. And most of the time, the primary toolbar on your left is the set of tools that you'll use very often, if not all the time. The default tray to the right is just what it says. This is sort of a another kind of level of the toolbars. But what you'll find is that as we go through this, a lot of the functions are the same, but excuse me, all the there's just multiple ways to get to all of them. So sometimes I won't even use the default tray on the right at all. I'll sort of hide it, and you can do sort of like this, and you can minimize it so it doesn't really show up almost at all on your screen, which is sometimes really great because you have a lot of detail in your model. And sometimes I'll have all of them open. I'll have a lot of them sort of there so I can see them all, and it just kind of depends on what you are doing at the moment, but at least it gives you a lot of options. You can dock the whole bar to the side if you want to, and that's generally the overall user interface. So what I'd like to do is just sort of kind of walk around this space, if you will. So what you start with is there's always a person. In this case, it is Lisanne. There's always a sort of generic person that sort of, I don't know, that they populate the model with, just to give you a sense of scale. And all these people, all these people that they have are actually drawn from photos of real people. So they're basically sketched over and drawn to scale. So as you'll see, what I'm drawing is just a line up and down to show you. If you look at the bottom right, I don't know if you can make this out in the video, but it says 5'5" 3/8 about, and that's just indicating that that's possible for this person, for Lisanne. And this kind of gives you a sense of sort of what one of the figures are that have there's an attribute called follow camera, and basically you can have certain things follow the camera. So like as you see me sort of frantically move around a little bit, the person here is always following. That's because it's sort of attached invisibly to the camera, and the camera is basically the perspective view that we have right here. I'm zooming in and out with the wheel on my mouse, just to give you an idea. And I've set up my shortcuts, which we'll also get into a little bit in a few minutes. I've set up my shortcuts so that I can press the wheel mouse to, or the mouse on the wheel on the mouse, to allow me to orbit, which means that I am literally moving around a fixed point in space. And I can also, if I hold Shift down, I can pan or move horizontally and up and down in space from in basically a given plane. And what this allows me to do is to sort of understand space in many different ways. There is always an origin. So if right now I am into the line drawing tool, which is probably the most important tool that you have. It is the thing you will be using the most. One thing that I try to do is I try to set up shortcuts very early on. What I'll do for you in a few minutes is go over sort of how to set up the shortcuts if you want, and just sort of explain the benefits of using them. So the reason I mention this is because for me, my shortcut for draw is actually just D. So I can switch between other things, and then I always know that, you know, D is sort of the sort of default shortcut for draw. So if I want to just start I'll explain sort of what these lines are coming from the origin. You have the z-axis, which is the blue. You can sort of see that there's a solid line going up and down, and a sort of a stippled, dotted dash blue line going down from the origin. And really all this is saying is that this solid line is a positive z-axis. And I believe that you can change these. They're not necessarily called X and Y, but in this case, SketchUp uses colors rather than just axes like X, Y, Z. So here you can think of the green and the red almost as the X and the Y in 3D space. So X is let's just say that X is the red for now, Y is the green, and Z is the blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide Lisanne, and I'm going to start drawing just to show you sort of what the basic sort of way to interact with SketchUp is. And the thing to understand fundamentally about SketchUp that's very, very different from a lot of other 3D packages is that you are, and I think this is the reason why a lot of architects tend to enjoy using SketchUp for a lot of things, is because SketchUp is more akin to 3D drawing than it is 3D sculpting, if that makes sense. So there are other packages like 3D Studio Max, Maya, Rhino is sort of in between. It's probably a better version of, oh, okay, we got a quick question. How did I hide the model? So in this case, all I did was I have a couple shortcuts for that, but basically what I did was you can, and I'll go more into the default tray as well, but just to show you sort of what's happening here. But basically you can right click on something and it'll bring up sort of a series of other, just a series of other kind of pieces of information and things that you can do, sort of like an info palette that's unique to just the item at hand. So you can sort of go in here, I can kind of see the info, you can tell what layer it's on, you can tell, I mean, it's called Lisanne, you know, or you can, this is the quickest way that you can hide it, really, is just to go up here and hide. I wanted to hide it because I wanted to be able to bring Lisanne back, but you could also just as easily go in and erase the whole thing, and now it's just completely gone. What I've done here, and I don't know if this is a default or not, but you can go in and create things like Control-Z as undo, things like that, just in case you make mistakes. So there are a lot of default shortcuts that are, things that you'll find in like Photoshop or Word or other sort of general packages that you might have used before. But the right click is sort of how you get to this other immediate menu. And there are other things that we can sort of go into here. The one thing to note about this is that it is a component. The difference between, I'll just give you a quick synopsis of this, is the difference between a component and a group. A component is basically, now I showed this just by quickly copying it with a shortcut that I have, but just to sort of help you understand, a component is something where if I start making changes to Lisanne's pants here, or I start changing, another piece of her geometry, you can tell that there are sort of other things happening across the other components. So anytime I change one, I'm changing all of them. The difference between that and, say, a group is if I wanted to just make a group, I could, and I'll go over some of these other tools as I go, but I just want to quickly explain this concept. So I've grouped this, and if I make a copy of this and I change the group doesn't change the original. The reason why this is important is because if you think about things like windows or doors or pieces that would get replicated over and over again, but you don't necessarily need to change them, or you want them to change all at once, that would be something that's important to know, that you want to create a series of components from the same original component and move them in space rather than creating groups. So going back to where we were before, like I said, this is all about drawing. It's not about sculpting. As you can see me just sort of generate those quick blocks. It's all about drawing something and then extruding shapes to create other things. But you're creating them almost from nothing. You're creating them with the line work and making more out of them rather than, so it's much more of an additive process than it is a subtractive process. That doesn't mean you can't subtract from things, but when you do, it's less of a 3D mass and more of a 3D series of lines. So you're when you take away from these things, as you'll see when I start sculpting here, or I shouldn't even say sculpting, start building with line weights and line work, you'll see that it's much more of an additive process, almost like you're creating a paper model, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's not clay, it's paper. There are faces, there are, it's hollow, it's all hollow. There's no solidity to anything that we're doing here. It's all about 2D geometry being sort of folded and blended to become something three-dimensional rather than thinking of it as a block of some substance that you're sculpting away. So let's just get started here a little bit. One of the questions before was how do we make something a little bit more specific than just, I just sort of abstracted some really quick shapes right there. I'll do it again. You can either use, in this case, because we haven't really used it yet, I'm just going to start drawing. I'm going to click once at the origin just to make it simple, and you can sort of see it highlighted here. The black, well, now it's yellow. I'll do this off of the origin so it's easier. The line that we have here, you can see it's highlighted red because it's parallel with the red axis. If I do this, it's parallel with the green axis, and if I do this, it's parallel with the blue. That's important because it'll help you really sort of keep yourself centered as you move from one model piece to the next model piece. If you look at this, I'm going to just simply draw a line, and the way that SketchUp makes a face, these are basically planes, but it calls them faces. And you can see that I'm sort of hovering over a point so that I can sort of get it in line. And then as you can see, the two ends have sort of bubbled up with black dots. Now I know that they are in the same general location on the green axis. I can click over, and now what I have is, this isn't a perfect square, but it's fairly close. The other tool that's really, really important here is the Extrude Tool. Now I'm just going to show you how to make this simple shape, and then I'll show you how to make it more exact. So what we have here is the Extrude Tool. You can find it over here. It's called push-pull, but basically what it's doing is it's taking a plane and extruding it in one dimension or in the other. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull the face up. And as it does that, to whatever increment that you want to, it will create the other sides of that geometry. So this plane right here that I'm sort of hovering over is the same geometry as the original base. We can see that because if I erase these lines, this is a paper model. Like I said, it's not solid. You can take a plane away, you can take a piece away, and all of the other pieces will generally stay intact. But what's happening here is it's not going to, there's no physics here in the SketchUp world. It's not going to fall on itself or anything like that. You're just building it piece by piece, and the extrude is a very simple way to make something three-dimensional very quickly. The other way we could have done this, if I go back to the original plane, is I could just start drawing and hover over here to sort of make it easier to snap. So now I know that all this stuff is in line. I could do this, go over here, do the same thing, and I could come over here, and either this one or this one are at the same height. So I know that as long as I hover over one for a little bit, come up, and it's going to be right there. So then I connect all these, and then as soon as I do this, it's not just going to connect. Now, if you see what I did just now, if you connect this, anytime that the whole plane is as long as all the lines are in the same plane, it will automatically create the face. So if I connect this, it created the face. If I connect this, it'll create two faces, because what's happening is it's connecting all four lines on both sides. So voila. I mean, you can basically, if I take this one away, it'll take away two of the faces. SketchUp can't live without at least three sides to each face. It's just the way that it's organized. Now you can have something like a triangle here, and I can literally just click on the face itself and delete it and still have the line work there if I want to, but the face will never exist without the lines. So it's sort of the relationship that a square has with a rectangle. Some rectangles are squares, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So it's the same logic here with SketchUp, where you basically can do certain things multiple ways, but you have to make sure that all of the lines on the face are, they're all in the same plane, and they can all sort of, as long as they're connected, they'll create that face. So what we've done here is we've sort of made a 3D object. But here's the thing. What if I want this to be a 5 foot by 5 foot cube? Well, let's just say, just to be simple. So I'm just going to get rid of this for a second. If I want to, I can start from the origin just to make it simpler, or I could literally start anywhere else. What I'm doing here is I'm starting to pull on the line here, and you can see at the bottom right there is a length gauge. And really what this is all about is, and this is why it was very, very important to make sure that we had the right sort of template to start with, because that length at the bottom would have been based on whatever units that were in the template to start with. So because we chose inches and feet, that's what we have. You can change, I believe, the tolerance if you want to you know, like right now it says it's going to the near 16th of an inch, but you could change that to something else, I believe. And even if you don't, I think the thing that I always try to do is I try to draw and sort of put together these objects, you know, with very simple dimensions in mind. One of the things you'll find as you model with SketchUp more is that not everything has to be absolutely exact. Especially because in most cases, I personally don't use a SketchUp model to take the 2D drawing from again, just because I find that a lot of times it's a lot of work to clean up the drawing after anyway. But sometimes I'll use it as a rough guide, because you can cut sections and plans through SketchUp models. I'll just use it as a rough guide and then create something else, whether it's in a Revit model or a CAD model, or in my case now, the firm I work at uses Vectorworks. So what we have here, though, if I wanted to just start making something, and like I said, I want to create, because you know what, let's turn this person back on. So let's say Anne wants to have a table, let's say. I don't know why. Maybe because she wants to put all of her tools and things down, and she wants to rest. So let's say we want to create a 5x5 by 5 cube so that she can just set everything down. Let's say, and literally as soon as you have this line started, I can literally type in 5 and then just an apostrophe for feet, and then press enter. You can see that, like, if you notice, the length bar starts out as white with all these numbers going in it. But as soon as you start typing something, it'll turn yellow. You finish whatever you need to. So now I have 5 feet. I just press enter. That gives me exactly 5 feet. I can go back and check it because it's starting the line from the end of the last line. I can go back and sort of hover over it, and I can check my length so that I can sort of see that the measurement is the same. That's really important because it'll allow you to check a lot of things as you move forward. So let's do this again. We know that we were on the red axis. We want to be on the green axis now, and you just do it again, another 5 feet. Now I don't need to hover over here. I could if I wanted to. I could just do this, hover over, and be done. But let's say I just wanted to start really, really close. Doesn't matter where you start, as long as you know that you're on the red axis. That's all you need. Then you type in 5 feet, and you're good. Now I know that this is going to, without even looking, I know that this is going to line up because I know that I've drawn everything at 5 feet evenly. So just as a check, I'll go over here. I'm not even going to look at the point. I'm going to go past the point. I'm just going to be on the green axis. You can tell that it covers right over the green axis. Now, the important thing that I'm going to show you here that is sort of one of the next things we'll talk about is sort of the reason why you need to understand SketchUp as a drawing tool more than a modeling tool is that when I let go of this and I click, not only has it finished the face for me and created a new square. You know, this is a perfect 5x5 square. I've also have this little leftover line here. And the reason why this is here is because as soon as you draw a line over another line that's in the same plane, let's say I draw another line from this edge out. It doesn't matter where it was as long as I can see, you know, you can tell that this is on this line because it's highlighted red. There is no red dot, and then there is a red dot. And really what's happening is you can tell that as I pull this away, there's a little red dot on the blue line now that means that that's where that started. So I can end this just to show you. And now what I actually have, if I go back here and click, is I actually have 2 separate line segments. And this creates a new set of planes. So I can do, if I wanted to close this again, I could if I clicked here to here, it'll close this triangle. If I click here to here, it'll make another triangle. And now this sort of looks like a sailboat with a mast. Now, if I take the mast away, I take this line away with the eraser, basically what you get left over is you get one surface. And the thing to remember here as you move along is if you don't want this to be segmented like this, all you need to do is you can either click on this line and sort of just press delete and get rid of it, or you can use the erase tool, which will sort of automatically do that for you. The one thing that you'll notice is that as I'm clicking, you can't tell right now, but I'm clicking onto here as I sort of move the eraser around. And what's happening is nothing is happening to the plane itself. The eraser is only governing sort of what happens with the line work. So I can erase lines all day, but I can go back here and I can't erase any planes. So we'll go over some of the other tools in just a second, but including the eraser, but I just want to give you a sense of how you can keep using this. We still want to make our 5x5 or 5-foot cube. So the same thing goes with the line. If I want to make this a 5-foot cube, all I need to do with the push-pull tool, go over here, click the push-pull tool, or use your shortcut, and basically click on the surface. You can see that it's sort of activated with this sort of blue sort of dotted stipple. You can click on it and then just start pulling. The reason why it's push-pull is because depending on which way you're going, you could go in either direction. If I wanted to get really fancy, I could do this, and then I could just start modeling away, and I could start subtracting things if I wanted to, and do this. I could sort of connect whatever I wanted. You could start to get, now see, the one thing is here is this is deceptive, because this looks like it's on the plane, but I just started drawing and it's not even on the object anymore. So the thing that you need to check is that if you can see that all these lines are really sort of heavy shaded, the reason is because it's not actually creating a plane. There's an outline for anywhere that is sort of like a axonometric rules of drafting. You want to have the thing that has space around it have the darkest line weight. So what SketchUp defaults at is if there's geometry around something, it will be the darkest line weight. You can change those settings if you want, but I usually keep them sort of where they are. So if we want to make this an actual plane, you can tell that what I did immediately, or what happened immediately, was I created this. It created 2 new planes, and basically what happened was this is now, this is something that I can extrude because it's got geometry to it, but before there wasn't that final line to sort of connect everything. So anyway, that's just sort of a interesting thing that happened just by sort of free-flowing a little bit there, but basically this is, we have, so 5 feet. So here's our 5-foot cube. I've input all the numbers. It's everything we want it to be, and all I need to do is, if I just want to move this around as a group, I'll highlight everything by clicking on it multiple times. So let's click away. If I click this once, it'll just click the plane. If I click it twice, it'll click the plane plus all of the line work around that plane. And if I click it 3 times, it'll actually click everything that geometry is connected to. So I'm going to right click, and I don't want to make it a component, I just want to make it a group. So I'll make it a group. What you can see over here is that now that SketchUp knows that it is a group, it is in the outliner, which is just sort of a list of all your groups and your components. You can tell that the group here is just the simple box, and then the basically the next to Lisanne's name here in the default tray and the outliner, there's 4 little squares, and that is sort of the differentiator between the components and the groups as you're just sort of looking through here. The thing to sort of realize is that, you know, you can get pretty good about making things that are very, let's say, regimented and straightforward, but you do have to sort of allow yourself, especially in SketchUp, because it's called SketchUp for a reason. You know, it's about sort of like its main benefit is to conceptualize certain aspects of your project. So don't be afraid to, even if you have something that's really pure like this 5-foot cube, don't be afraid of doing something just very simple like, you know, so going in here and, you know, making some fun geometry that, I don't know, does something like this. You know, now I have sort of a shape to what could be conceptually a tower or, you know, whatever I wanted it to be. And, you know, that took 2 seconds. You know, now maybe that's not what I really wanted, but at least it's something that it can, you know, you can very quickly and very easily start creating shapes and different kinds of things, you know, with just the click of a button. So one thing that you'll notice is that I actually had to go into the group to edit it. So I can't, you know, if I just draw a line here like I just did, it doesn't split anything because this geometry is inside the group. This geometry of the line is outside the group. The reason why that's important is because if you want to keep everything separate and clean, you want to start making groups. The groups themselves are basically ways to allow you to create components or little blocks of information so that you can you know, iterate very quickly on different things. You know, think about this in a bigger way. If I have a full-fledged design and I group the whole thing together, and that's one concept idea, you know, I can quickly iterate. So let's say I want to go in here and I want to do something similar to what I did before, which was create some sort of fun shape here. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing right now. If I want to, I can quickly copy this over. And what I'm doing here, just as a sort of let's say a pro tip, is I'm just literally going over and I'm hitting Control, I'm holding Control, and I'm moving this at the same time. So, you know, now I can go in and say, okay, well, I want this to be a little bit shorter. I want this to have a wider base. And, you know, all this stuff came from the same geometry, but now it's doing something that's a little bit different. You know, you can already tell that this is the second iteration of something else. You know, if you don't like it, then you can just always Control-Z your way out of whatever you want. So let's just quickly go over the tools. You know, we're sort of running a little bit low on time, so I would like to have some opportunity for other questions, but like I said, this is a little bit more, I'm just trying to sort of have a little bit more of an impromptu riff here. I'm just trying to create some things. So what I'll do is I'll quickly show you all the major tools, and I'll show you how to set up your shortcuts so you can kind of get it, at least you know where to go to set up your shortcuts. So we already looked at, this is the select button. You've seen me sort of use it throughout, but really all it does is it allows you to select things and click into things without actually editing something. The paint bucket tool, which is always very fun. You can, so this is the default sort of non-paint color. You can go in and let's say I want the whole thing to be this orange color, which is fun. I can just click on the group, and because it's all one group, it all gets the same color. If I just want to have a face be this orange color, I can go in, pick the orange, and just click on the face, and only that face will be orange. And I can keep moving, and you know, I can come back and make this another color. And you know, your colors can change. You can have different patterns. You know, these are scaled so that you can, you know, you can change the scale if you want to. If the pattern isn't the right size, you can and this is a little bit more advanced, but I'm just showing you that you can do this. If you go in here and you can sort of position the texture and make it bigger, so this is way out of whack and you would never have this as your texture. But let's say you want this, there's a whole lot of things you can do, and you can actually do that by, you can get very, very specific. You can get this to the point where you know exactly where the pattern ends and where it starts and how big it is and all that. You can edit it almost exactly like we have been before, but that is a little bit more of an advanced feature. We've gone over the line tool, which I think is probably the most important tool. We've gone a little bit over the eraser. For anybody who needs any more explanation, I think the major part is really that it affects lines but not planes. So that's something to be aware of. And again, create things all as though they're paper boxes. This is a cube of paper. Rectangle, rotated rectangle, circle, polygon, all of these tools work almost exactly like the line tool. They just have different functionality. So, circle, you can create circles with a very specific radius. It's not about length anymore, it's about radius. If you're, I'll give you a good one, if you are working on freehand, I fairly rarely use this because it's not very accurate. But you can, create a whole bunch of different things with freehand if you want. I very rarely use that. The move tool. So you've been seeing me move things around a little bit. This is that tool. You're going to be able to move things up and down. You can input things just as we did. So now I moved it up 5 feet. I can move it back in place 5 feet. Move it really wherever I want. The one thing to notice about the move tool is that as you sort of move around groups, you can actually, there's a sort of secondary function here where you can actually rotate things in space. And you can sort of see based on this this guide here that you can basically rotate it on I think this has got to be set up to be 15 degrees. You can rotate it to however you want to. You could leave it like this if you wanted to. It's all up to you. Rotate. What you'll do, and you can see how each of these is turning into a different color because it's on a different color axis. So right now you're rotating around the blue axis, around the green axis, around the red axis. And I'll just show you. So you start at the point that is this sort of center of wherever you're rotating. And then you, just like the line tool, you're going to pull along the line and then click, and then you will be sort of rotating about that point. I can do that however I want to. I can do it on this face if I want. I can rotate this up and down, and I can input the angle if I want. So let's say I want it to be 15 degrees. Just put in 15 and it's 15 degrees. The other thing you can do, which is a really good tool for handrails, is I can use the follow me tool. So just very simply, if I draw a line and I draw a circle, let's draw this way. Let's draw this the other way. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to draw this. Let's say this is 3 inches. One thing to note that when you're in inches and feet, if you just draw something with without actually putting in the 1 apostrophe, it'll just automatically go to inches. So if I do this as 3, this is 3 inches, not 3 feet, just so you know. So what I want to do is, and this is a little bit more of an advanced feature, but just so you know you can do it, you can sort of take, the center of this. Let's say this is a very big handrail. Let's say I wanted to use the follow me tool. I can use geometry with other geometry to literally have it follow shapes. And I'll make this a little bit more complicated just so you can see it. If you hold this, you use the follow me tool, and you click on this surface, the line work that it is nearest to, it will sort of start following literally. So you can see and this is going to be really fun. You can see it sort of literally follow, that's why it's follow me, follow the line of the path here. And this creates its own sort of smoother geometry. Now, the thing to, as cool as this is, and now this looks like some sort of a pipe screensaver from Microsoft Windows. You can, and I'm just going to quickly turn on the hidden lines here. This still has the lines, just so you know. It's just not showing them because you can sort of visually trick things in SketchUp to looking like they're smooth, but they always have these planes. I mean, I can actually unsoften this and sort of basically bring it back from being hidden. And if I see it here, you know, I can tell that this is a plane right here. If I get rid of this plane, everything else stays intact. But just so you know that this isn't sort of a there will never be a surface that is smooth like this that isn't a series of just general planes, whether those are triangles or rectangles or things like that. So let's say I want to group this whole thing together, and I'll use the scale. So scale is basically just to change the proportions of a given object. You know, you can start making, and you can already probably see the things that you can do with this. Now, the one thing to notice is that when I just grouped this geometry, it didn't group the lines. So you got to be careful about what you want to keep in the group and what you don't. Because if you're not careful, some of that sort of extra geometry can either, if you don't want it, you can leave it behind, but if you do want to keep it, you want to make sure that you're grouping everything together, which I didn't at the time. You can sort of scale all this stuff. You know, the one example that I had before with the tower, I could scale that literally to a building size if I wanted and start from something a little bit smaller, because the nice thing about SketchUp is it's very quick and easy to change almost anything on the fly. The other thing you can use, I don't use this as often as I probably could, but just because I'm so used to taking the line and measuring with the line in the bottom right corner, I don't tend to use the measure tool, but you can use it the same way. And basically what it'll do is you can use it the same way I do use the line tool, and it'll give you the figure at the very end. Like it'll calculate it in the bottom right for you, and it'll also basically show you the little increment of sort of whatever you have in the bottom right corner of the tool as you sort of pull it around. You know, there's dimensioning opportunities. I don't tend to use these very much, but they could be useful if you just want to see. This is one of those follow me, or the things that are attached to the camera, so you can always see the number upright. That'd be weird if, you know, it just was in one plane, because if you rotate around it, you might lose it. Some of these other things are a little bit, you know, I use them a little bit less frequently, but they're there if you want them. This is your series of view tools, so that you can kind of, you know, if you want to zoom in and out, if you want to create a zoom window, so you're zooming into a very specific portion, that's actually pretty handy. Zoom extents is one of my favorite zoom features, because let's say you are way out here and you can't tell where you are, and you just sort of like, oh no, where'd my model go? Zoom extents, click it once, it'll zoom you immediately in that same perspective, but it will take you to all of the geometry that is available in the scene. So it'll basically scale to fit everything that's in the scene, which is amazing, especially when you sort of lose track of your model, which does happen from time to time. Something else that is interesting to think about is position camera. This is basically just putting you at the point of view of like a person's eye height. So let's say I'm just going to make a little bit of a platform here. So let's say I want to see my cube that we've made from a person's vantage point. I'm kind of up in the air. This isn't where a person normally would be, but if I click on this face, which is at 0, 0, or 0 on the z-axis. I click here, I'm at the eye line of a person. And if you can sort of look around with the look around tool with this freaky little eyeball, or you can use the feet here, which are the walk tool, and now you are walking literally on at that eye height, which for SketchUp is 5'6" according to the bottom right. You can change that to whatever you want, and you'll be able to walk from at that height. But just so you know, it sort of defaults to 5'6" because it considers that the average height. Other things to look at, just very quickly, the show highest shadows. We haven't really even gotten into shadows, but just so you know that they're a feature. You can sort of play around with what time of day it is, with season. So this is January, February, March, April, May. You know, all the seasons here. You can change what time of day it is. Or you can just, you know, one thing I would suggest, especially if you have a slow computer, is not to turn this on very often at all, because it can really slow everything down. I apologize if I'm going a little bit too fast, but I just want to show you a couple things here, and then I'll show you the shortcuts, and we should be good. So you can change the sort of the way that you're seeing everything. You can see it just by line work alone. The hidden line is sort of, it's showing you everything in lines, but it's showing you them without showing you all the lines behind it. So if there's a surface, it'll stop your view. If I get rid of this surface, you'll be able to see the rest of the lines, but with that surface, it sort of hides everything behind it. This is a pretty good thing to have. It's the shaded view. So if you remember before, we had the texture here. The shaded view actually allows you to see everything with, again, it's a way to keep your computer from sort of crashing, and you can basically see your, you know, the texture doesn't go away. It's just hidden at a lower value, so that, you know, the color of that texture is still there, but it's been sort of turned into something a little bit more abstract, so that you can kind of get a sense of what it is, and still keep your model moving. You can sort of turn in, these are sort of the automatic views that you can kind of play around with, just in case you want to see something from one side or the other. And then I guess the one last thing I want to do is, you know, these are just another set of ways to look at all of the sort of the same things that we've looked at here in the default tray. You can see the same shadow values. You can see the same, there's soften edges and scenes and all sorts of things that you can kind of organize your model even further with. But I do want to just go into the preferences here. So if you go over to Window and then Preferences, something that's very important is to go into your shortcuts. And basically what you want to do is, as you sort of identify for yourself which are the tools you use the most often, you want to start creating things that are, like, I'll give you an example, shortcuts for those tools that just really make sense. For example, I have started to put, let's see. Okay, so the select tool is a very good one. I use my pinky on the keyboard on my left hand to do a lot of these shortcuts. So Q is very easy for me to assign to select, because it's something I can just sort of move my hand very quickly, and I know that it's gonna be one of the easiest ways for me to get to select very quickly without having to go through and looking at all of the buttons. I think as you get better with this program, you'll understand that there are easier ways to sort of come at all of these tools, and you know, this is the first place to start as you get more acclimated with all the tools and what they can do. So with that said, you know, I think there's a whole bunch, I mean, you can tell we've already been talking about this for an hour, and a little bit over, and I apologize for going over, but there's just so much here. There's so much that you can sort of take from this, and we've only really scratched the surface. One of the things I love to do right now, though, is just, I'd like to just take a moment and, if anybody really has any other questions, I'd love to answer them. If you have any questions about either what your next steps might be, or how, what are the kinds of things that you would want to know maybe in a future workshop, or if you have any questions about what I just did, I'd be happy to answer them for the next couple minutes. Again, I apologize for going over a little bit, but I think we really got through a bunch of stuff here, and I hope that it wasn't too much. But if there are any other questions, I'd love to answer them. Otherwise, if anybody has to go, I really appreciate you coming out and watching this. I think it did. I think it was a pretty good walkthrough to get you guys started. But if there's any feedback, I'm always looking for ways to do this better. Again, this was a little bit less structured because I wanted to get through as much as I could, but hopefully it wasn't so chaotic that you couldn't follow it. So I hope that method worked a little bit. I think it works a little bit better to just kind of work through the tools, show you some examples, and at least give you an idea of sort of what the program can do. This isn't by any means an advanced course or anything like that, but hopefully it can help you. Okay. So I think maybe one of the comments so far is to create the more advanced class for architectural geometry specifically. I think that'd be awesome. It probably would help to have some examples of things that we could create in SketchUp specifically that would help you out, like doors or windows or stairs, or even that handrail example. I think would be helpful if we show that in an application setting. So I think that's a great idea. One thing I would say is, that's a good question. How to put objects into the library and bring them out later? Yes, you can. That would definitely be a great thing to look at, because we can, in SketchUp, in the model itself, or just as your own, as you keep modeling your own things, you can start to create your own little libraries and pull models in and import things and make things whatever you want them to be. So I think that'd be really, really great opportunity to make your process even more efficient. I think if there's anything else, if not, I just want to say thanks for being awesome. If you guys are interested in more of what I do and how maybe I can help you more, please, by all means, visit evolvingarchitect.com. I post once a week, and I do this once every, so the reason, again, why it's Workshop Wednesday is, it's the last Wednesday of each month. And what I'm going to do for everybody who registered to watch this today is, I'll send you links with the things that we had here. Maybe I'll even include the model that we ended up with, even though it's sort of crummy. So you guys can sort of take a look at what we ended up with. And I'll also give you a couple slides that we had at the beginning, and a link to this video so you can watch it again. Again, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the couple people who gave comments. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And I hope that you have the opportunity to look at SketchUp some more. The one thing I would say is just keep practicing, just keep using it. And the one thing I would say is if you have a project maybe that you could start up, actually, one last question here. SketchUp can export views as DWGs, but the problem is that is one of the functions that you need Pro version for. It can export things. Let's see. We'll go back really quick. Can export. It can only really export Google Earth models, which is, it used to be able to, in its a pure form, export anything. And once they started splitting the model into free versus Pro, the Pro version has recently been DWG only, which is, or has been the only one that can export the DWGs, the 3ds files, the other kinds of 3D files that you would want, like STLs if you're doing something with patterns or things like that, or you need to laser cut or 3D print something, you're going to want the Pro version. I think the major difference here is, the Make version is really meant for the sort of casual modeler, and the Pro version is meant really more for the architects. But especially when you're learning, it might be advantageous just to learn as much as you can, and then if you feel like you're getting a lot out of it, go for it and purchase the actual Pro version. I find that most of the things that you need to do with SketchUp, you can pretty much do without the Pro version. But there are probably those instances where it makes sense to have the Pro version, like if you wanted to export things. SketchUp or Trimble knows that that's one of the things that you need, so that's one of the reasons why it's only in the Pro version. But that could be something to look at as you sort of develop your skills. So if that's it, again, thanks for everything, and I'd love it if you could either leave me a comment of things that I could improve on, or drop me a line at my email, mike@evolvingarchitect.com, and feel free to ask me any more questions. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good evening.